Kids TV!
The king's son was standing at the palace gates, for he had been warned by someone, probably the fairy godmother, that a beautiful unknown princess was to come to the ball. When she arrived, he gave her his hand and led her to the hall where all the guests were dancing. The moment she appeared, all voices were hushed. The music stopped and the dancers stood still. Such beauty stirred the hearts of all. Nothing was heard but voice saying, "Ha! How beautiful she is!" Even the king, old as he was, turned to the queen and said,
"She is the most beautiful being I have ever seen since I first saw you."
The prince offered Cinderella the seat of honor and afterwards asked her to dance with him. She danced with such modesty and grace that everyone admired her even more. A sumptuous dinner was served, but the prince didn't have a single bite, for he was too busy admiring Cinderella. Later, she went to sit down with her sisters and shared with them the selection of fruit which the prince had given her. The sisters, who had not recognized Cinderella, were surprised that such a wonderful princess had chosen to sit with them. The clock struck 12:15. When Cinderella courteously bid farewell to the royal family, the queen invited her to attend another ball, which was to be held the very next night. Cinderella graciously thanked her and climbed into her coach just in time. Back at home, she ran to her godmother.
Dearest fairy godmother, thank you so much. Tell me, do you think I can go to the ball again tomorrow?
Oh, yes, very well. But bear in mind my warning.
Suddenly, a knock was heard at the door. The fairy godmother vanished, leaving Cinderella sitting alone in the chimney corner. Dressed in her dusty old clothes, rubbing her eyes and stretching herself as if she had just woken up, she opened the door. The sisters were back from the ball.
How long? You've been gone.
It may seem long to you, but we were having a splendid time, and we did not see the time go by. There was a most beautiful princess there, more beautiful than you could ever imagine, and she must have liked us very much, as she chose to come and sit with us.
Who was she?
That's just what everybody would like to know. Not even the prince knows her name. But we heard that he will do anything to find out who she is.
Cinderella was thrilled, and a shy smile appeared on her face. When the next night came, the sisters went off to the next ball. After they had gone, the fairy appeared as before and helped Cinderella to get ready.
Now remember, pay attention to the clock.
Cinderella was even more magnificent than the night before, and the king's son remained all the while at her side. He said so many sweet things that Cinderella could think of nothing else. So much so that she forgot the fairy's warning. When 11 o'clock came, she failed to notice the clock striking. When the half hour struck, and the prince grew even more charming, Cinderella could still hear nothing but his voice. And again, at 11:45, Cinderella still sat dreamily next to the prince. Then the first of the 12 bells struck. Up sprang Cinderella, and she fled from the ballroom. The prince followed her, but could not catch up. However, during her flight, one of her glass slippers fell off, and the prince stopped to pick it up. The splendid coach and its 6 horses, the coachman and the footman, all vanished. Only a pumpkin lay on the ground. A rat, 6 mice, and 6 lizards scampered off. Cinderella arrived home, breathless and cold, without a carriage or a coachman, and with only one little glass slipper in her hand. When the sisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked,
Did you have a good time at the ball today? Did you see the beautiful princess again?
The princess was even more beautiful today.
But at midnight, she suddenly ran out. She ran so fast that on the palace staircase, she lost her glass slipper.
For the rest of the night, the prince didn't do anything but stare at the glass slipper. I'm sure he's fallen in love with that mysterious girl.
Since the prince had lost sight of his princess, he asked the soldiers at the palace gate if they had seen her drive away. But at that hour, only a ragged girl had passed through. No one knew what had become of her. But he promised himself that he would not rest until he found his princess. Only a few days had passed when the entire town was stirred at the sight of a herald carrying a trumpet and a glass slipper. He announced,
The prince will marry the lady whose foot fits the glass slipper.
and the town people took up the cry.
The prince will marry the lady whose foot will fit the glass slipper.
So hundreds and hundreds of young ladies tried it on. But since it was a fairy slipper, it fitted nobody. Besides, nobody could produce the matching slipper, which was safely tucked away in Cinderella's pocket. Eventually, the herald made his way to the home of the 2 sisters. Although they very well knew that neither of them was the beautiful princess sought by the prince, they tried with all of their might to squeeze their foot into the slipper, but in vain. Cinderella, who was standing by and watching from the chimney corner, at last said,
Let me try it on?
What? You?
I have orders to tie the slipper on the foot of every maiden in the kingdom.
Oh!
Please, sit down here and try on this slipper.
The slipper fitted her as if it had been made of wax. Then Cinderella drew from her pocket the other glass slipper, put it on her other foot, and stood up. The mere touch of the magic shoes restored her magnificent dress, and the Cinder Maid became the beautiful, elegantly dressed princess once again.
Forgive us, Cinderella! Forgive us, please, Cinderella! Forgive us!
Oh, with all my heart, I forgive you, my dear sisters. And love me just as I have loved you.
Then she departed with the herald to the king's palace and told her whole story to His Majesty and the royal family. They were not surprised, for everybody believed in fairies, and everybody longed to have a fairy godmother. When the prince finally saw his wife-to-be, he fell in love with her all over again. They married and lived happily ever after.
Tell me, do dreams ever come true? To change my fate, what should I do? May my life be shiny and new, and not remain just a with the new shoes and the lovely dress. I'd be so happy, I confess, if I could go to the ball. Fall asleep and don't be weary. Do not fear, it won't be scary. In a dream you'll meet a fairy. She will give you lovely slippers. With your shining slippers you'll dance. Fate shall give you such a chance. And then from the prince a loving glance. Sleep, my child, and dream sweetly. The fairy waiting at your bedside, she will be your wise friend and guide. Soon you may become a sweet bride, so you must rest in soft slumber. Let golden thoughts fill your head with echoes of tales you've read. Find your prince and soon you'll be wed. Sleep, my sweetheart, please now sleep.